Hey guys, tonight we step into a world where silence is louder than speech, where time is measured not in hours but in him, and where life unfolds behind thick cloistered walls built centuries ago in the grand city of Constantinople. You're going to follow the footsteps of a Byzantine nun, rising before dawn and vanishing into vesper. Picture a stone corridor, still cool from the night's wind, a flickering oil lamp, and the faint scent of beeswax and olive oil. You're not here to tour, you're here to live, if only for the next hour, or to as a sister in Christ in the 10th century. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive this life. Not the fasting, not the freezing stone floors, and certainly not the endless chanting on an empty stomach. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video, and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere cozy, let me know in the comments, what's your city in your current local time? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake just before sunrise, not to the sound of an alarm of course, but to the steady clang of a wooden cimentrinan, ancient plank of wood struck rhythmically with a mallet, resonating through the still air. It's your call to rise. You've done this every day for years, maybe decades. You don't groan, you don't hesitate, you rise. The stone floor is cold, your sandals rough. You grab your woolen mantle from the peg on the wall and head toward the chapel in silence. The day begins with Orthros, the morning prayer service. It's still dark. A faint glow from oil lamps and candle sconces flickers across faded iconography. The scent of incense rises in curls. You chant psalms, barely opening your lips, your voice blending into the sisterhood around you. You're not here for personal expression. You're part of something larger, older, and more eternal than yourself. After nearly 2 hours of prayer, you'd break for a modest breakfast. It is, like every meal here, an exercise in restraint. A small slice of barley bread, maybe a handful of figs if you're lucky, and watered wine unless it's a fasting day, which, in Byzantium, it nearly always is. You eat in silence as one of the sisters reads aloud from the lives of saints. The voice is monotone. The saints are suffering. You chew and listen. Next comes labor. It might be cleaning the chapel floor with a coarse rag and vinegar water. Or you might be sent to the kitchen to peel onions for lentil stew. Perhaps it's your turn at the loom. The convent produces textiles, vestments for clergy, altar cloths, even the occasional tapestry for wealthy donors. You've practiced the same stitch so many times your fingers follow patterns your mind doesn't have to recall. Some sisters copy. If you're among them, your day is spent hunched over a wooden desk with a reed pen, painstakingly copying passages from scripture in minuscule Greek. You keep your letters even, your ink thin, your breathing calm. The sound is just quills against parchment, the creak of a stool, and the occasional sneeze. The margins are narrow. The room is colder than you'd like. If your hand slips, you scrape the vellum with a knife and start again. There's no waste. The midday meal is not much different than breakfast. You eat in silence. You bow when the abbess enters and rises. It's not just formality, it's a spiritual discipline. In this convent, humility is baked into every hour of the day. You are not important. The work is. Afterward, you may receive spiritual reading. A senior sister might lead a quiet session on a homily by Basil the Great. If she's particularly learned, maybe something from Gregory of Nyssa. The learning is not for vanity, but for understanding the divine order of your place in the world. As afternoon shadows stretch across the cloister yard, you gather again for none the 9th hour prayer. Another round of psalms, a reading, and solemn chants. Your knees may ache, your thoughts wander, but you return to the rhythm. It's not about feeling spiritual, it's about showing up. Heart steady, mouth open, eyes lowered. Then comes more labor. Maybe tending the convent's herb garden, perhaps preparing salves in the infirmary. If you've been trained in simple medicine, you crush dried chamomile flowers and mix them with olive oil. There's a sister recovering from an illness, and you help change her band. You speak gently, or not at all. Before sunset, you wash your hands and face with cold water from a stone basin. Your final meal is taken, standing just soup tonight. The liturgical calendar forbids meat, dairy, and eggs. You rarely feel full. That's the point. As dusk falls, the sisters gather one last time. Vespers is the most beautiful service of the day. The sun filters through colored glass, gold-painted icons glimmer in the candlelight, and the chants rise like fog into the vaulted ceiling. The final psalms echo through the hall, slow and mournful. You feel the weight of the day in your legs, in your back, in your very breath. Once Vespers ends, there is great silence. No speaking now, except in emergency. You may retire to your cell and lie down on your straw-filled mattress. You might read a few verses by lamplight, or you might simply sit in stillness, staring at the flame of the lamp until your eyes drift closed. You've done nothing exciting today. No battles, no politics, no travel, just devotion, repetition, order for the world. It's forgettable. But for the sisters, it's the path to salvation. But then you begin to wonder, what happens when a life of silence is disrupted? What if something or someone breaks the rhythm? You are woken again this time, not by the wooden cementron. It's deep into the night, sometime between compline and matins, the hours of sacred silence. Normally, no one stirs at this hour, unless something is wrong. You sit upright, on your low cot, listening. The only light comes from the faint flame of an oil lamp outside your cell door. Then, a whisper, two voices, low but urgent. One is Mother Cassian, the other sounds younger, trembling, afraid. This is not the usual rhythm. You are trained to ignore disturbances and let the elders handle matters. But your mind has already slipped into motion, wondering what could merit such a breach of silence in a place where even joy is restrained. As the whispers fade, you try to return to sleep, but the moment sticks like a pebble in your shoe. Your breath feels too loud in the quiet. You think of the rules of the Typicon, the monastic code that governs every movement here. Even dreams, if shared aloud, are subject to the scrutiny of obedience. The next morning arrives without fanfare. No one mentions the disruption. During Orthros' Mother, Cassian chants the psalms with the same slow cadence. The sisters bow and stand, kneel and cross themselves, as if nothing happened. And yet, beneath the solemn hymns and flickering light, something feels altered. There's a tightening in the air, a delay in the usual flow of movements. After prayers, you are assigned to the laundry basin, scrubbing garments on a plank with ash, soap, and icy water. The repetition is physical, grounding, but your thoughts drift. Last week, a messenger arrived from the He came under the pretense of delivering parchment, but you overheard a sister say he also brought a sealed letter. No one speaks of it now. By midday, you are sent to the scriptorium to help illuminate a manuscript. You work beside Sister Iona, whose eyesight is fading. You paint the edges of a Greek gospel with red ink and blue flowers. The pigments are mixed from ground minerals, malachite, cinnabar. The supplies are precious, often donated by noblewomen who seek prayers for their sins. While you paint, Iona leans closer and murmurs, "Have you heard?" Her voice is barely audible. You keep your hand steady on the parchment. One of the sisters, she asks to leave. Your brush hovers in midair. She says she heard a voice, during prayer, that she must return to the world. You know what this means. Once a nun is tonsured once, her hair is cut in the shape of a cross, and she takes her new name. Leaving is not permitted. Not unless she's gone mad, or worse, unless she was never truly called to begin with. That night, during Vespers, your eyes scan the chapel. One sister is missing. Sister Miriam Choir Kundide, barely 20. She arrived only 2 years ago, full of youthful. She had once lived in a villa, you were told. Her father served in the imperial court. She chose the veil after a family scandal, but no one ever said what kind. Her absence is not mentioned. In the coming days, you begin to notice a new rhythm forming, a subtle shift. Sister Theckel usually sings louder during compline. The cook oversalts the lentils. A small mirror once used in the infirmary has vanished. And in the garden, the mint beds are left untended, their leaves curling in the heat. Then the announcement comes. Mother Cassian addresses the sisters after prayer, her voice calm but firm. Sister Miriam has been released from her vows. By patriarchal decree, you inhale sharply. Such a thing is rare, almost unheard of. The process requires intervention from the bishop, investigation by monastic officials, and a judgment of spiritual unfairness. For the community, it is a wound. For the church, an embarrassment. The abbess offers no further detail, but everyone knows what this means. She was not truly called. The divine seed fell on rocky ground. Later that day, you're summoned to help clean Miriam's former cell. You slide the wooden bolt and step inside. The room is bare. A few scraps of parchment in the corner, a threadbare pillow. Her psalter remains on the shelf, open to Psalm 88. Why, O Lord, do you reject me and hide your face from me? You close it gently. Sister Eupraxia, who helps you sweep, mutters, "Perhaps the world will break her, or perhaps the convent did." You don't reply. That night, during great silence, Your thoughts return to the path you've chosen, or the one chosen for you. You think of the freedom Miriam now has, the sound of her shoes on stone as she walked out, and the silence she left behind. The next morning, the bells ring as usual. You rise, pray, fast, work, sing. The same patterns, the same breathless rhythm. But something is different in you now. You begin to wonder, what does it truly mean to be called? Is it the persistence of prayer, even in emptiness? Is it the willingness to endure, or is it something deeper, quieter, something even the abbess can't explain? You are standing at the icon. Dust settles slowly in the monastery chapel, caught in shafts of golden morning light. Your fingers trace the ancient carving as you wipe tiny crosses, scalloped patterns, worn edges smoothed by generations of hands. Behind you, the nave is still. No voices rise. No footsteps echo. It has been 2 weeks since Sister Miriam left. You haven't spoken about her again. No one has. Her name, once chanted in communal prayers, has vanished from the liturgy. The sisters have reabsorbed the silence she left behind, as if she were never here. But in the space she occupied, a crack remains not in the walls, but in your mind. You've begun to see the cloister differently. The patterns still hold, but now you notice how tight they are. The strict timing of meals, the rigid prayer cycle, the disciplined gestures of reverence, they are comforting. Yes, but also enclosing. You wonder, do they shape the soul, or smother it? A new girl arrives. She is 15, maybe younger, escorted by a deacon from the city. Her name is Anthusa, and she says it without meeting anyone's eye. She carries no possessions, just a folded robe and a linen pouch. Her head is shaved immediately, as per custom, and her old clothes burned. Within hours, she is in the chapel, reciting psalms she barely knows. Watching her, you remember your own arrival. The disorientation, the mix of dread and relief. You were not forced to convert. You had nowhere else to go. That's true for many here. The monastery takes in the devout, the unwanted, the illegitimate, the widowed. It claims you without judgment, but it also doesn't let go. Sister Eupraxia whispers that Anthusa comes from a merchant family ruined by debt. Her dowry gone. She was offered here instead. A transaction. A sacrifice. The child cries during evening complaints softly, but enough that it echoes in the cloister. She's assigned to your care for the next week. You teach her how to fold her bedding, how to respond during litanies, how to rinse lentils for the next day's meal. She speaks rarely, but watches closely. You admire her, and on the 4th day, she asks, "Do you ever forget your family?" You hesitate. You try to remember your brother's voice, the scent of your mother's shawl, the way your father laughed. The images come faintly, like candlelight behind glass. Sometimes you say, "Does it get easier?" No. You answer honestly, but it becomes quieter. She doesn't ask again. By the end of the week, Anthusa chants with steadier breath. She bows deeper. She begins to carve a cross into the soft wood of her cell door, a mark of presence, a claim. Meanwhile, you are sent back to the scriptorium to finish the gospel manuscript. The pages are nearly complete. You mix gold leaf with egg whites, applying delicate circles around the chiro. The weight of the brush in your hand feels different now. It is no longer just a task, it's a memory being made permanent. You realize these pages will last far longer than your life. That evening, during Vespers, you begin to notice the voices around you. Not just their sounds, but the fragility behind them. The sister next to you coughs mid. The one behind sways slightly, her knees unsteady. You all wear the same robes, follow the same rites, but within each body is a story carried silently. At the altar, Mother Cassian recites the closing doxology. Her voice is worn. She is older now than when you arrived. Her hands trembled slightly when she lifts the gospel. You wonder what she gave up for this life, what she still carries, buried under decades of devotion. Later, during great silence, you walk alone in the courtyard. The stars are sharp above the cloister walls. Cypress trees sway faintly. Somewhere, an owl hoots. The city beyond Constantinople glows faintly over the hills, a distant hum of life continuing. You feel the separation acutely, and yet, you remain, not out of obligation, but out of something else. Not certainty, but conviction. Not joy, necessarily, but peace. A kind of peace that comes only after boredom, labor, and small acts repeated endlessly, until they become sacred. You think of Sister Miriam and wonder where she sleeps now, whether she still prays, whether she regrets leaving, Or perhaps she's finally breathing freely. The bell rings for midnight mass. You turn, slowly, and walk back toward the chapel, your sandals silent on the stone. Inside, the sisters are already gathering, half asleep, but moving as one. You take your place. You cross yourself. You open your mouth and begin to chant. You are part of something that no longer needs explanation. And in that moment, you wonder, does devotion have to feel beautiful to be real? Or is the true miracle that you stayed, even when it didn't? The sun doesn't rise in Cappadocia so much as it reveals itself in slow defiance of the cold. As the thin light stretches across the volcanic ridges and jagged rock chimneys, it spills into narrow cave corridors carved centuries ago by human hands. These corridors, rough, winding, half-frozen, lead to the heart of a convent, carved straight into stone. You are one of the sisters who wakes here every day, in a cell the size of a cupboard, wrapped in woolen layers, breath visible in the morning air. Your feet find the frigid floor instinctively. No fire was allowed last night. The wind howled across the plateau, and your cell door shook on its hinges, but you did not flinch. You have heard wolves before. You have heard worse. The cementron echoes through the stone passageway, a dull, resonant thump from wood against wood. It's still dark. Everyone rises together. That's the rule. And in this Cappadocian winter, no one dares lag behind. Not out of fear of punishment, but out of shared understanding. If one sister falters, the rhythm of the whole house collapses. You wrap your mantle tight and follow the flicker of a candle down the curving corridor, each step echoing. The chapel is hewn into the rock, low-ceilinged, candlelit, damp. The air smells of damp wool and cedar resin. Moss grows near the altar stones. You bow, cross yourself, and join the chant. Orthros is always long. In winter, it feels longer. The chapel is never warm. The psalms drift upward, condensing on the rock ceiling, and falling again as cold droplets. You barely blink. You sing, slowly, steadily. The words are not yours. They belong to the centuries. After prayer, breakfast is taken with stiff fingers, a slice of black bread, frozen hard at the edges, a broth made from roots and dried greens. The bread is dunked until it softens, and swallowed without expression. One sister reads from the life of Saint Macrina, whose own convent in Anatolia inspired places like this. Her miracles are spoken like facts, her sorrows like scripture. There is no fire in the refectory. There is never a fire in winter, unless someone is deathly ill. After the meal, work begins. You are assigned to the water team. The well is outside, down a slope, and half-frozen. You carry to Empheri on a wooden yoke across your shoulders. The cold bites through your veil, cracks your lips, but no one complains. You draw water, your hands submerged in ice. You carry the sloshing weight back into the convent. The Empheri steam went set in the hallway, the heat from inside them rising like incense. You pass Sister Chrysanth on your way to the weaving room. Her hands are wrapped in rags, frostbitten at the tips. She nods without smiling. Everyone's fingers split open by midwinter. The loom room offers no relief. You press your swollen fingers to the spindle and begin the motions. Linen and wool, blended and twisted, woven into robes for monks, into cloths for the altar. The cold numbs your pain, and that's the best you can hope for. The labor doesn't stop because the season turned cruel. After the work hour, you kneel for none. Your knees ache on the frozen floor. The wind whistles through unseen cracks in the stone. You listen to it, layered beneath the chants. Nature, too, joins the liturgy here. There's one break barely a half hour where you may sit in silence, or write her so. You choose to read from the Philokalia, tracing the lines slowly. The pages are stiff. Your breath fogs the text. One phrase catches you. Acquire inner peace, and thousands around you will be saved. You read it again. What does peace look like in a place where your hands are bleeding? You close the book and prepare for the next labor. Some sisters tend to the sick. Others clean the latrines. One oversees the sheep, which live in a deeper cave warmed by their breath. You're sent to help with the herbs. Not many survive the frost. You pick dried thyme from clay pots. Grind it with a mortar to make oil rubs. The sick are always worse in winter chill blight. Coughs, fevers that don't break. You pass Sister Domna on a pallet, her face slick with sweat. Shivering though 3 blankets cover her. You say a prayer and move on. By Vespers, the sky has darkened again. It never lasts long this time of year. Candles are lit one by one, shadows flickering across ancient frescoes. Christ Pantocrator, saints with solemn eyes, The room grows golden. It is the only warmth you feel. You sing, voice hoarse, mouth dry. The final prayer echoes in your chest. Then, silence. Not symbolic silence, not meditative quiet, absolute stillness. In the great silence, you return to your cell. You sit on your straw pallet. You remove your sandals and rub your feet. The candle is almost gone. You consider lighting another, but decide not to. The wax is rationed. You lie down in full robe. There is no changing for bed. The cold won't allow it. You cross yourself once more and whisper a final line from the Psalms. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. But before your eyes close, your thoughts return to something Sister Domna said a few days ago. She had been feverish, barely coherent, but she gripped your hand and whispered, "The snow is God's silence made visible." You didn't understand it then. Maybe you still don't. But tonight, wrapped in stillness and frost, you begin to wonder, is this suffering holy or just forgotten? You awaken to a creaking groan not from your own limbs, though they ache as always, but from the chapel door. It's still dark outside, but the sound is unmistakable. In a convent built from rock and silence, even the faintest disturbance echoes like thunder. You sit up on your straw pallet. Your breath escapes in a pale cloud. The candle on your wall shelf is spent. Only a stub remains. You pull your mantle tighter and listen. Footsteps. Hesitant. Someone is moving in the chapel. That's not unusual. Some sisters pray through the night, but this sound carries something else. Uncertainty. Urgency. You slip out into the corridor, moving quietly past alcoves carved into the rock. You reach the chapel door and peer inside. By candlelight, you see Sister Domna kneeling before the iconostases. She's recovered enough to stand, but not by much. Her back is to you, her veil askew. She's murmuring something, not psalms, not prayer. I saw the snow, you free. She isn't speaking to you. You don't even think she knows you're there. I saw the snow, ... and it said nothing. But it wasn't empty. You retreat quietly. Domna's fever must have returned, and her mind is wandering. Still, something about her words stays with you. They echo in the narrow corridors, even after you've returned to your cell. When the Simintron finally sounds for Orthros, you're already awake. The sisters gather with red hands and cracked lips. The air is bitter, colder than yesterday. The snowstorm must be worsening. You spot Domna among them, standing, quiet, calm. She chants the psalms in rhythm, as if nothing happened. Breakfast is cold lentils today. The firewood was too damp to catch, so the cook served it as you eat with stiff fingers, looking around at the others. Most are stoic. One or two grimace at the icy food. It's just another morning. The abbess makes a quiet announcement after the reading. Due to the storm, no labor outside the walls today. All sisters remain in the main cave. That's rare. Even in snow, you normally tend the livestock or fetch water, but the wind outside now howls with a voice of its own. The path to the well is likely buried. Instead, you're assigned to the candle room. It's not warmer, but it smells of beeswax and resin. You help melt down stubs into new molds, pouring wax carefully to avoid bubbles. The work is slow, steady. You find yourself grateful for it. Sister Thekla works beside you. She's older, long past 60, and nearly blind, but her fingers are sure. She knows the weight of good wax, the right temperature, the sound of it cooling. She doesn't speak often, but today she says, without looking up, "The snow purifies more than fire ever could." You glance at her. What do you mean? In the desert, monks burn away the self with heat. In the mountains, we do it with cold. You nod slowly. Thekla continues pouring, and both make room for silence. That word against silence, it seems to haunt this winter. After labor, the sisters gather for Nun. The wind rattles the carved stone shutters. You chant, but your voice feels hollow. Not weak, just distant, as if someone else is singing for you. In the afternoon, you are sent to the common cell to help Anthusa, the newer sister, practice her psalms. She stumbles through the Greek, lips trembling in the chill. You wrap her hands in cloth, then guide her through Psalm 102, one of the penitential ones. You ask her, "Do you understand these words?" She nods. Then, a little. You press gently. "Do they mean anything to you?" She pauses, then says, "It sounds like someone trying to stay alive." You don't reply, but you remembered your first winter here. You remember thinking the exact same thing before Vespa's sister Domna collapses. She was standing near the herb room, waiting for her assignment. She simply dropped no cry, no warning, just a slow fall like a sack of grain. You help carry her to the infirmary cave. The floor is packed earth and straw, the walls rough and damp. You'll help the healer mix a paste of honey and wine, dabbing it onto Domna's cracked lips. She shivers under layers of cloth. Her eyes flicker open, and she murmurs, "Too much snow in the heart." She sleeps for hours. When she wakes again, the abbess is at her side. "I saw something," Domna whispers, "during prayer, or maybe during sleep." The abbess says nothing. Domna continues, "I think I saw an angel, but not shining. Not with wings, just snow, falling upward." The abbess closes her eyes, then stands, saying, "Only rest now." No one speaks of it again. That night, during great silence, you can't sleep. The cold is not new. The stone walls are not new. But something is changing. You think of Sister Domna, her fevered visions, of Thekla's words, of the snow that keeps falling outside. You think of the silence inside these walls so often seen as emptiness, but what if it isn't empty? What if it's full of things we're not yet ready to hear? You press your fingers to the icon nailed above your bed. The Virgin holds the child, both with wide, knowing eyes. They say nothing, but their silence feels deliberate. Is it possible, you wonder, that the silence of this place is not the absence of God, but the place where he waits? You wake to stillness, not the usual heavy silence of monastic life, but something different, deeper, heavier. The storm has stopped. Snow lies thick against the carved stone windows, muffling all outside sound. You pull back your mantle, step into the corridor, and realize how soundless the world has become. Outside the main gate, snow drifts are piled high, and no wind stirs. It's as if time has paused. The semitron is struck, its tone duller than usual, wrapped in the thick cotton of snow. The sisters gather, shoulders hunched, mouths pale. You notice that Sister Domna is missing. A glance to the infirmary confirms it. She hasn't improved. The fever still lingers. During orthros, your voice feels thin in the cold air. The psalms hang like breath clouds, vanishing before they reach the ceiling. You watch the candlelight flicker against damp cave walls and wonder if Domna's silence now is voluntary or final. After prayers, you are told that the abbess has ordered all labor suspended for the morning. Instead, the entire house will pray the Akafist hymn for healing. You haven't done that since last spring, when another sister, old Phalathia, passed away in her sleep. Everyone kneeled. You begin to chant the long litany to the Mother of God, 24 stanzas of praise, one after the other, your knees pressed into straw and stone. Your breath grows ragged. You do not stop. As you reach the final verse, someone begins to weep, softly, behind you. Then another voice, lower, joins in a broken sob. Not loud, but sharp. These things are not forbidden, but they are rare. Emotions, here, are tucked beneath layers of obedience and discipline. But grief finds cracks. When the prayer ends, the silence feels larger than before. No one moves for several minutes. The abbess rises slowly and speaks. The snow has sealed us in. For now, that is God's will. Let us carry one another through the waiting. You spend the afternoon in the weaving room. The looms are quiet, but your hands move automatically. Sister Thekla hums a psalm under her breath. Even that feels loud. You pause, watching your breath rise in the frigid air. Antauza sits nearby, untangling a spool of thread. Her fingers are still clumsy, still raw from the cold, but she doesn't complain. She glances up and says, "Why does it feel like everyone is waiting?" You don't know how to answer. Because they are. Maybe for news, for warmth, for spring, for Domna later, during Vespers. The abbess announces that Sister Domna has passed. She says it plainly, without flourish. Sister Domna surrendered her breath to the Lord during the 6th hour. A ripple of bowed heads follows. No sobbing, just silent. The body is prepared that night. You help wash her limbs in water warmed by candle heat, rubbing her skin with thyme oil, wrapping her in linen. She looks smaller in death, her fever gone, her jaw slack. You remember her words. The snow is God's silence made visible. The funeral is held in the inner chapel. The snow still blocks the path to the crypt, so the body will remain inside for 2 more days. You chant the Trisayon slowly. The walls echo with mournful cadence. Each note is held longer than necessary. Each breath stretches between verses. The night after her burial, something shifts. You dream of falling snow. Not cold, not wet, just light, drifting in stillness. And in it, the figure barely visible kneeling, arms raised not in despair but in release. You wake with the image still imprinted behind your eyes. You don't speak of it, but in the morning, you see that others look different too. Less grim, tired, yes, but softened. Even Thekla, while pouring wax into candle molds, says aloud, "I think Domna died clear." You ask what she means? Her mind was noisy. Her prayers weren't. At the end, she became her prayer. That evening, you return to the chapel early. The snow has begun to melt near the roof, droplets pattering gently down the stone. The light feels different, gold, faint, almost tender. You light a candle not for Domna, but for yourself. And in the hush that follows, you realize something. The silence of this place was never meant to be empty. It was always waiting to be filled, not with noise, or ambition, or cleverness, but with presence, with breath. Within, you return to your cell with that thought, and for the first time all winter, you lie down not just to escape the cold, but to rest in it. You close your eyes and think, perhaps survival here isn't the miracle. Perhaps the miracle is that so many stayed, year after year, through storm and silence, and found something sacred in the frost. You sit at a wooden desk, narrow and plain, its surface scarred with generations of shallow knife marks and ink blots. The room around you is dim but alive with rustling parchment, whispered chants, and the faint, persistent scratch of reed pens across vellum. This is the scriptorium of a Byzantine convent in Thessalonica, small, cloistered room hidden behind thick walls and thicker silence. Outside, the city bustles. Merchants haggle near the harbor. Church bells toll across the neighborhoods. But in here, you live in a world where time is measured not in sunrises, but in letters. Each page you copy could take days. Each line is a prayer. Your fingers are stained with soot-based ink. Your eyes blur if you don't blink often. A candle flickers beside you, threatening to die with every draft. The window slits are too high to see the street, but you can just make out the pigeons cooing on the tile roofs outside. You are a scribe, a nun, and this copying scripture, illuminating gospels, translating saints' lives from older manuscripts is your life. You didn't choose this task. The abbas assigned it to you after your second year. You were quiet, careful, precise. That was enough. In the scriptorium, speaking is discouraged. You communicate by glances, gestures, and the quiet shifting of your stool. The room is filled with sisters like you, bent over their work, cloaked in wool, skin chapped from candle smoke and cool drafts. You are a choir of scribes jour. Music is the rhythm of the pen. The manuscript you're working on is a psaltercopid, from an older one found in the monastery's archive. The Greek script must be exact. Each unsheathed letter carefully placed on lined parchment. Every breath and line break dictated by long-standing tradition. You dip your pen into the ink, tap it lightly on the edge of the pot, and continue. Lord, have mercy. Outside, the world spins on. Emperors rise and fall. Armies pass through the city. Icons are paraded. Sermons delivered. Relics honored. But here, history slows. The days repeat. Morning prayers. Bread and olives. Ink and parchment. Evening psalms. Silent. At midday, you're allowed outside briefly to gather light. You sit in the inner courtyard, the sun warming your veil, listening to the wind pass through the fig trees. You stretch your fingers, aching from gripping the stylus. Sister Melanian sits nearby, her hands wrapped in linen from a boil that burst. She was once the best illuminator among you. Her golden halo work was known across Macedonia. Now she coaches others. It's not the hand that makes the icon holy, she whispers, not looking at you. It's the silence in the soul when you draw it. You nod, unsure if she's speaking to you or simply to the wind. After your break, it's back to the You begin the first letter of Psalm 78, a capital O in red ink, surrounded by floral decoration. You don't use gold today. Supplies are low. The convent hasn't received donations from the bishop's office in weeks. You scrape an error off the page with a sharp blade, careful not to damage the vellum. Mistakes must be erased immediately. Some sisters claim that their errors are whispered back to them in dreams, spiritual corrections sent by saints. You haven't had any such dreams, but you remain careful. The abbess walks through the scriptorium once in the afternoon. Her steps are slow. She nods at the pages being worked on, rarely saying a word. When she pauses at your table, you stop writing and lower your eyes. She places a small slip of parchment beside you. A new assignment. You are to transcribe a homily by Gregory of Nyssa for a visiting bishop. It must be completed in 10 days. The bishop is old. He'll need large script. You'll have to rewrite your standard lines to accommodate the change. The parchment will be expensive. The abbess gives you a single nod and continues on. You swallow your fatigue and begin measuring the line. Precision is everything. That night, at Vespers, your shoulders ache. Your back feels as if a stone has been pressed into it. But the rhythm of chanting offers brief relief. You sing slowly, eyes on the icon. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked. The same psalms you spent the day writing now fill the air around you. There's something comforting in that. You have turned thought into form and now form into sound. Before bed, you enter the scriptorium one last time, just to see your work by lamplight. You look over the redo, its edges clean, the surrounding decoration tight and balanced. You run your fingers lightly over the text, careful not to smudge the ink. You feel the faintest pulse of pride, but then you hear Sister Melania's voice again in your memory. It's not the hand that makes it holy. You close the manuscript. You return to your cell, the candle burning low, and as you lie down, your thoughts begin to drift. What becomes of the words you write once they leave your hands? Do they survive longer than your name, or are you merely a shadow on parchment, soon to be scraped away? The next morning begins like the one before, and the one before that, Sementron, at dawn, cold water to the face. Psalmody in the chapel, mouths moving in unison, half-awake hearts reaching toward rhythm. But you carry something different today, an assignment. The homily of Gregory of Nyssa lies on your desk, waiting for your hand to give it life. The script must be larger. That means fewer words per line, more pages, more ink. The bishop is old and half-blind. The abbess told you. His request came through a deacon who smelled of expensive myrrh. Apparently, he requested your hand specifically. You're not sure whether to feel honored or trapped. Your desk has been cleared, fresh vellum laid out, quill sharpened. You begin by copying the title, On the Soul and the Resurrection. The Greek is dense, but beautiful. You pause to read the opening aloud under your breath. Life is a training for death, and death a passage, not a destruction. You consider this, pen still in hand. Life is training. You've spent years copying other people's thoughts. You've barely spoken to men since you no longer remember what your own handwriting looked like before the convent. Is this training or disappearance? You shake the thought. You are not meant to reflect too deeply on these things. You copy the first paragraph, then the next, then another. The words are like beads on a rosary. You trace each one carefully, checking again and again for errors. At the 6th page, the ink begins to fade. You dip again, but the pot is nearly dry. You gestured to Sister Theodoche, seated across from you, who nods and disappears to fetch more gall ink. While you wait, you stretch your fingers. Already, the joints are sore. Your eyes wander the room. Sister Melanian is tutoring a novice, guiding her through the subtle flick of the wrist required for proper minuscule script. Melania's hands are slow, but sure. Her Studenta girl, no older than 17, frowns with concentration. To your right, Sister Irene works on the Gospel of Mark. Her hand is trembling slightly today. You wonder if her eyes are worsening. She often works late into the night, long after Compline, muttering verses to herself as she inks them. Some believe her too severe. Others call her devout. You don't know which is more accurate. Maybe both. Theodote returns with fresh ink, thick and dark, smelling faintly of vinegar and iron. You give her a grateful nod and return to the page. By midday, your eyes burn. You blink, pause, and rub your temples. The abbess enters again. She walks the room, silent, inspecting. When she arrives at your desk, she studies your lines for a full minute. Then she says, quietly, "You press too hard. You freeze." "Yes, mother." It wastes the nib, loosens the fibers. "Yes, mother." She says nothing more, just places a finger on the parchment, pointing to the margin. "Give it air." Then she moves on. You exhale slowly. You'd been focusing so intently on neatness that you forgot the balance of the page. The abbess is rarely wrong in such matters. You adjust. Later, during the communal meal, you're too tired to eat much. Lentils, bread, a slice of salted olive, the usual. Another sister reads aloud from the life of Saint Cyr. Just as smoke drives away bees, so Tachata drives away grace. You chew quietly and wonder how many years of silence you've lived in now. After lunch, the bishop arrives. He enters the convent's guest hall with two attendants. He's stooped, bearded, draped in heavy purple. His eyes are watery but sharp. The abbess greets him. You and the others are not meant to approach Ellis summoned. Still, your heart pounds. He has come for the manuscript. You're only halfway through. You overhear him later. I had heard of your scribes. I see now the rumors are understated. Your stomach flips. Praise is rare here, and never direct. You return to your work with renewed purpose. That night, you don't sleep. You copy by lamplight. Every letter a prayer, every space a breath. You think again of Gregory's words about death as passage. You wonder what will happen to this manuscript. Will it rest in the bishop's library, be copied again in a century, or buried with him when he dies? You'll never know. 2 days later, Sister Irene collapses in the scriptorium. You hear the sound of a chair falling, a gasp band, then silence. You run to her side. Her eyes are closed. Her hand still clutches the pen. The ink has spilled across the desk. The abbess orders her carried to the infirmary. The sisters clean the floor. You're asked to complete her manuscript. She had been halfway through the Gospel of Mark. You open it carefully. The handwriting is tight, angled. Not your style, not your breath. But now your hand must carry it forward. You hesitate. You fear the page will reject you. But when your quill touches vellum, it moves. Slowly, as if the spirit passes from one scribe to the next. As if this is not the work of one nun, but of many, across time. That night, you write your name in the margin of your own manuscript. Just once. Just small. Not for vanity. Just so someone will know, I was here. And you begin to wonder, what happens to all these names when the ink fades? Are they gone? Or do they still whisper, one letter at a time, into the silence? You finish the manuscript the morning after the bishop leaves. The last word you copy up. You place a clean sheet of parchment over the wet ink and fold your hands, eyes closed. You don't pray. Not yet. You just breathe. The homily is done. You've spent nearly every waking hour of the last week immersed in its pages, its arguments, its gentle theology. Gregory's logic is like thread quiet, consistent, deeply woven. The soul, he says, does not vanish. It transforms. Like wax, it changes shape. The fire is not the end, it's the passage. You leave the manuscript on the abbas's table and return to your seat. But the scriptorium no longer feels quite the same. Sister Irene is still in the infirmary. No one knows if she'll return to work. You've visited her only once. She was awake, but quiet, eyes closed, lips moving though, whether in prayer or from fever. You couldn't tell. The abbas assigned you to finish her gospel. The shift from one handwriting to another is jarring. Your strokes are broader, your ink steadier, but you try to mirror her style. You lower your lines. You mimic her spacing. When you finish each folio, you sign with her name in tiny letters, just as she would have. You do not take credit. It isn't yours. Meanwhile, Sister Melania's vision worsened. She now instructs solely by voice. Her student, the young novice you watched weeks ago, now draws icons without tracing. You see her smile, just once, as she perfects the curve of an angel's wing. The scriptorium hums with quiet change. The bishop has sent a gift in return for the manuscript of small packets of gold leaf and a jar of blue pigment from the east. Lapis, lazuli luxury, maybe two. The abbess announces that the pigments will be used to produce a new manuscript of the Acts of the Apostles, to be stored in the convent's own library. For the sisters who will come after, she says, so they may know we were here. The project will take months, years, possibly. You are chosen as the lead scribe. At first, you feel only weight, expectation, pressure. But when you sit again at your desk, parchment under your palms, your pen freshly cut, you feel something else. Relief. Because you know this work. You trust it. You've given your hands to it. Your breath, your sight, your silence. Day by day, you begin again. You mark each folio. You prepare the inks. You test the gold with a soft brush, gently pressing it onto the halo of Peter, then Paul. You space the verses carefully, making room for commentary in the margins. You write not for a bishop now, not for a patron, but for the future, for the unknown hands that might touch these pages long after yours have stilled. You start inserting a small cross in the bottom corner of every completed page. It's not required, but the sisters begin to do the same. Not for ownership, for continuity, as if to say, I added this line. I lived here. I passed a pen. One night, you wake to the sound of rain, not a storm, just steady, soft drops on the stone roof above. It's the first rain in weeks. You sit in your cell, listening. There are no bells at this hour. No chanting. Just the drip of water and the creak of timber. You imagine it soaking into the dust, softening the edges of the world. You light a small lamp and open the manuscript in progress. You begin to read what you've already written. You don't hear your voice. You don't see your hand. You see only the words themselves, alive. You remember something Melanian said long ago. You are not the author. You are the witness. You are beginning to understand. You aren't preserving the past. You are translating presence into permanence. That's why it matters. Not because your script is neat or your lines are justified, but because someone, someday, may read this page and feel less alone. You'll close your eyes and ask yourself, if I vanish tomorrow, would these pages still speak? Would they carry something of me? Would they be enough? And in that silence, heavy but whole, you begin to think, yes, maybe they would. You wake before dawn, not to bells or wooden cementron. For once, the convent doesn't smell of wax or parchment or damp stone. It smells like boiled lentils, roasted garlic, and a hint of rosemary. The kitchen sisters have been up since the third watch, preparing for the feast of the Transfiguration. Today, unlike most others, there will be food. Real food. In a Byzantine nunnery, meals are not simply about nutrition. They are ritual, memory, even penance. Fasting is not an exception. It is the norm. Most days, you eat in silence, hunched on a wooden bench with nothing but olives, barley bread, and cold legumes on your plate, and always in silence, as another sister reads aloud from the lives of the saints. But feast days are different. You can smell the difference in the walls. You rise, wash quickly, and move down the corridor toward the refectory. It is still quiet, no speaking until after matins, but there is movement. The cook, Sister Euphemia, is arranging bunches of basil at the altar. Fresh basil. From the garden, that alone is rare. She caught it just before the frost, wrapped in wet cloth, hidden for this day. Basil in Byzantium means more than seasoning. It's basilicum, the kingly herb, sacred and symbolic. They say it sprang up where St. Helena discovered the true cross. It's placed at altars, pressed into oil, offered with bread. Today, it's woven into garlands and tucked behind icons. It means transformation. Matins passes like a slow breath. The chants linger longer. Incense hangs heavier. You find your eyes drifting to the altar's edge, where a basin of washed apples and figs awaits blessing. A taste of When the prayers end, the abbess offers a short reflection. Today, we recall the light that transfigured the Lord. And so we take light into ourselves, not with indulgence, but with remembrance. You file into the refectory. There are no tables. Here just benches, lining stone walls, and a central wooden stand where a sister will read. The food is brought out in wooden bowls. Chickpeas cooked in olive oil, roasted eggplant with garlic, a single piece of river fish wrapped in fig leaves. You haven't tasted fish since Pentecost. Your stomach growls, but your mouth remains closed. The reader begins the life of Saint Theodora of Arta. Her life, like yours, was marked by denial, royal blood forsaken, luxury refused, her meals reduced to ash and herbs. But she was full of joy, the reader says, even in hunger, especially in hunger. You take your first bite as those words are spoken. The chickpeas are soft, the olive oil rich, the garlic warm and sharp. You chew slowly. You've learned not to devour even the best food. There is no rushing in the convent. Not in prayer, not in hunger. After the meal, you help with cleanup. The hearth is cleaned, bowls scrubbed with vinegar and dried with flax cloth. The fish bones are buried beneath the basil plants. Nothing is wasted. Even the peel of a fig finds use, boiled into syrup, fed to the compost, dried for medicine. Sister Euphemia shows you how to tie basil into small bundles. For the infirmary, she says, to crush into oil for fever. She moves slowly. Her hands are cracked from years of stirring pots and kneading dough. She still speaks like a grandmother, even though you're not related. You weren't always part of the kitchen rotation. It took years before the abbess trusted you with food. In the early days, you were clumsy with the lentil pot, always oversalting or dropping clay jars. Once, you shattered a wine jug meant for the Eucharist. You wept for hours. Now, you can gut a fish with 3 strokes and peel garlic in a single handful. You've learned how to read a fire by its color, how to sense when barley is done by its scent, how to stretch a pot of soup across 24 mouths without wasting a drop. These are holy skills. But today is not for thrift. Today is for memory. You find a spot in the sunlit corner of the herb garden, resting a moment while the basil sways around you. It's a simple space, no marble, no mosaic juiced, a raised bed of herbs, oregano, mint, rue, marjoram, and thyme. Sister Hypatia once told you that basil bends to the voice of prayer. She might have meant it metaphorically, but you like to believe it's true. By late afternoon, the air has cooled. The kitchen grows quiet again. The dishes are stacked, the oil lamps lit, the extra food packed for the nearby leper house. Every feast must end with charity. Before Compline, you return to your cell. A half apple remains from the basin, small, red, slightly bruised. You bite it slowly, savoring its tartness. It tastes like sweetness remembered, and as the bells ring for evening prayer, you reflect on the strange holiness of the day. How is it that the same bread so plain on fasting days can become divine when broken after prayer? How can hunger be grace? And why does it feel like, in feeding others, you're finally being filled? The feast is over. This morning, the kitchen smells again of wet ash and boiled roots. No garlic, no basil, just steam rising from barley gruel and bitter greens. A single turnip sliced into thin pieces floats in the pot, giving off a faint sweetness, one that disappears quickly once ladled into bowls. You stirred slowly, watching the gruel bubble in the clay cauldron. The fire is low to conserve wood. Outside, the wind hisses through cracks in the stone. Another fast has begun, the Dormition fast, 2 weeks of abstinence. No oil, no wine, no fish. Just legumes, pulses, and silence. The rhythm of monastic food life returns with steady severity. It doesn't matter if your stomach still remembers the sweetness of figs and fish. You will not taste them again for many weeks, maybe longer. You serve the gruel in silence. Wooden bowls are passed hand to hand, eyes lowered, mouths closed. Sister Theodote, the reader, opens the life of Mary of Egypt, whose body wasted away in the desert as her soul grew radiant. Her fast was not by calendar, but by survival. She once lived on 3 lentils a day. You glance at the bowl in front of you. It contains hundreds. After the meal, you sweep the kitchen floor with a straw broom. The ashes from the hearth are scooped and poured into a pail veil. Be mixed with vinegar to clean the flagstones later. The air smells of damp wood and old stone. Sister Euphemia stands by the back door, peeling onions for tomorrow's stew. Her eyes water, but her hands never pause. You ask, gently, do you ever tire of the same food? She smiles without looking up. The soul eats by the mouth's restraint. You nod, though you don't quite believe it. Not today. Later, the abbess assigns you to the garden. The herb beds have been damaged by wind. You spend the afternoon replanting rue and mint, wrapping broken stalks with twine, pressing them into the earth. Your hands are caked in soil, your fingernails dark. You'd find a sprouting sprig of basil, small and stunted, trying to grow in the shade. You whisper a prayer as you press its roots back into the soil. Inside, Sister Hypatia brews tinctures for the infirmary. She shows you how to dry orange peel to soften the bitterness of wormwood tea, and how to slice ginger root thin enough to flavor hot water for sore throats. She gives you a satchel of dried chamomile to store. Only 4 fevers, she says, not for comfort. In the evening, as the wind picks up and rain begins to mist through the courtyard, the sisters gather for Nun. The chapel is cool and echoing. The chants are slower, now longer. Pauses between. You feel your hunger rise again, but not just in your belly. It's in your breath, your legs, your thoughts. This is not just about food. This is about space, room for something to enter. You think of Saint Macrina, who spoke of fasting not as punishment, but as emptying the vessel so the spirit could fill it. But tonight, your vessel just feels cold. Back in the kitchen after Vespers, you prepare the bread for tomorrow. There will be no leavening knot during the fast. Flat loaves only. Barley flour, water, and salt. You mix the dough slowly, kneading until it no longer sticks. The scent is earthy, faintly. You remember how your mother used to make sweet loaves on feast days. She would press raisins and orange peel into them, sprinkle sesame across the top. You haven't tasted that kind of bread since entering the convent. You miss it more than you expected. As the dough rests, you sit near the hearth, warming your fingers. The fire burns low, but the coals glow. You poke them with a stick, watching sparks spiral upward into the chimney's blackness. Sister Euphemia enters quietly and sits beside you. She holds a small wooden box. Inside, 2 cloves of garlic and a crumpled parchment. I found it tucked in the apothecary shelf, she says. A recipe from Lentil cake. For feast days. No flour. Just boiled lentils, mashed and baked with honey and fig. You raise your eyebrows. Is it allowed? Not this week. She smiles. But maybe next month. You both sit there for a while, watching the coals fade. That night at Compline, you chant softly. The words settle like stones. You try to feel the meaning behind them, the depth of sacrifice, the beauty of deprivation. But all you can think of is a loaf of warm bread and a pot of lentils mashed with fig. Back in your cell, you eat a single olive before sleep, salty, wrinkled, still cold from the cellar. You chew slowly, and you wonder, is grace found in plenty, or only when you choose to go without? The fast continues. You no longer count the days. The calendar is marked. Certainly the sisters track it carefully, not by numbers, but by saints, commemorations, liturgical shifts. But in your body, the days blur. Hunger becomes habitual. You no longer expect warmth in the stew, or oil on the barley. You no longer flinch when you smell nothing in the kitchen but boiled weeds and smoke. This is not misery. It's not even suffering. Exactly. It's a slow erasure of appetite. Not the disappearance of desire, but its quiet taming. Today, you help in the apothecary. Sister Hypatia prepares a tonic for a sister with a cough that won't leave. You crush dried licorice root into powder and mix it with warmed wine just a thimbleful. She hands it to the abbess, who blesses it before it's given. Meanwhile, Sister Euphemia asks for help cleaning out the root cellar. Supplies are low, there's a problem with the convent's delivery mule, and the merchant hasn't sent vinegar or barley in over a week. You inventory what remains. 4 sacks of dried chickpeas, a box of cracked wheat, 2 flasks of stale oil, and a nearly empty jar of salt. The olives are covered in white film. The figs are hard as wood. It'll stretch. Euphemia mutters. It always stretches. You smile faintly. It's true. Somehow. It always does. The abbess declares that the sisters will begin preparing for catharsis that cleanses in Lent to Lent. This means stricter fasting. No more warm food. Everything must be eaten cold. You'll make barley cakes, but bake them only halfway. Watered wine will be replaced by plain water. No more onion or garlic. They excite the blood, the abbess says. You recall the old stories of desert saints who lived on leaves and dew, who saw visions in their starvation. You wonder, quietly, if their hunger made them holy, or just delirious. The sisters prepare bread in silence. It's flat, tasteless, dense. You knead the dough with a wooden paddle, then press it into round clay molds. You prick it with a fork 12 holes for the 12 apostles. Then into the ashes it goes, covered lightly, to bake slow and uneven. While it cooks, you help a novice mix vinegar water with salt for the table. This will be the dipping broth for the next 3 days. At midday, the sisters gather for the meal, a single clay bowl for each, half a barley cake, a small scoop of dried lentils, and a handful of shredded dandelion greens. The reader chants from the ladder of divine ascent. Gluttony is hypocrisy of the stomach, which feigns necessity but desires excess. You chew slowly. It is not delicious, but it is enough. That evening, Sister Theodote collapses in the herb garden. You and another rush to help her. She's pale, but breathing. You carry her to the infirmary, where Hypatia administers warm water with honey. Her pulse is slow. The abbess stands quietly by the doorway, lips moving in silent prayer. Later that night, during great silence, you visit the garden. The stars are sharp. The basil is shriveled. Almost completely, only a few yellowing leaves remain, curled against the cold. You kneel and press your fingers into the soil. It's dry, unforgiving. And yet, beneath the surface, you know the roots still hold. You whisper to the plant, you'll come back. Not because it can hear, but because you need to believe it. The next morning, the merchant arrives. He brings oil, garlic, onions, a small bag of honey, dried apricots, lentils from Thrace. You help unload the goods, joy hidden behind solemn faces. The abbess thanks him with a loaf of dry bread and a whispered blessing. Sister Euphemia kneels at the pantry and weeps not loudly, but enough for you to hear. When you place a hand on her shoulder, she wipes her eyes and mutters, I thought we'd have to grind the candle stubs. You understand. In the siege of Constantinople, some sisters boiled parchment and leather for broth. This house is not far from such desperation, but not today. Today, you prepare garlic broth with a splash of oil. You mash the apricots into barley paste. You sprinkle salt over warm chickpeas. You even light a small fire, not for heat but for aroma. At the meal, the abbess offers no special announcement. She only says, Taste, but do not forget. And as the bowl warms your hands, and your first bite awakens your mouth again, you feel not indulgent, but gratitude. You'll close your eyes. You remember the dry soil, the bitter greens, the tasteless bread, and you wonder, maybe holiness isn't in hunger or fullness, but in remembering what each one teaches you. You sit alone in a narrow cell reserved for confession. It's a room barely large enough for 2 stools, a crucifix on the wall, and a small wooden screen. The air is close, faintly sweet with incense that lingers from earlier rites. Candle wax drips in slow beads onto the floor, and the only sound is your own breath. You are not here to confess. Not yet. You're here to listen. The priest arrives once a week. Not a monk, not a bishop, just Father Nikotas from the nearby village chapel. He comes quietly, dressed in simple robes, a man of late middle age, with soft eyes and lips that rarely smile. He says very little. He doesn't have to. The nuns do all the speaking. They arrive one by one, after matins or before compline, depending on the abbess's schedule. Each carries a burden, a thoughts too heavy to hold in silence, a memory they can no longer bury, a sin they cannot forget. You are the attendant. You greet the sisters, guide them in, make sure the fire does not die. You do not listen, not openly, but the walls are thin, the voices whisper, even when they try not to. And over time, the confessions seep into your skin. You remember the first, Sister Eustathia, hands shaking, lips pressed tight, whispering, "I hate the woman beside me in prayer. I do not know why. Her voice makes me angry." Then, another. "I stole a piece of honeycomb last Lent. I said it was for the infirmary. It was for me." And another, "I dream of him. Still, after all these years, I see his hands, his eyes, the way he looked at me when he left." You never speak of these words. You dare not, but they don't leave you. They cling like incense smoke, invisible and persistent. Today, you prepare the cell again. You lay out a fresh cloth on the stool. You relight the small candle, and you try not to think about what you heard last week. A voice trembling with fear. "I lied in my vows." That one came from someone you know, someone who sits beside you at every service, someone whose eyes you can no longer meet. In Byzantium, confession is not public penance. It is quiet, personal, woven into the fabric of monastic life. Sins are not shouted from rooftops, they are whispered into darkness, into the veil, into the cross. And the priest does not absolve like in the West. He intercedes, offers guidance, reminds the soul of its long road to grace. Sometimes the penance is simple. More, fasting, a longer vigil, silence. Other times, it is a deeper wound of separation from the Eucharist, a season without song, a temporary exile from the scriptorium or effect. Today, Sister Timothea is first. Her veil is loose, her eyes swollen. She bows before the crucifix and kneels. You hear only fragments. "I thought of leaving, just for a moment. I read the letter. It wasn't addressed to me. I no longer feel the prayers. They pass through me." The priest says nothing for a long time. Then his voice, low, almost inaudible. He speaks of dryness, of spiritual winter, of the silence that sometimes follows obedience. He says, "Do not mistake absence for abandonment." She nods, leaves her steps falter, but her eyes are clearer. You prepare the stool again. Next is Sister She walks upright, calm, but when she enters, her shoulders lower. "I struck a fly during prayer." You blink. That's all she says. The priest responds with gentleness. "Why?" "It landed on the psalter. I wanted to feel something." Silence. "You must not turn your hands into instruments of distraction, his father." She leaves quietly. In the afternoon, the priest rests. You bring him warm water and bread. He thanks you with a nod. You do not speak. You wonder what burdens he carries after so many years of listening. That evening, as twilight colors the chapel walls in amber and violet, the last sister arrives. It is Sister Magdalene. She is the oldest among you. Her hands are gnarled, her back curved like a bow. She moves slowly, deliberately. When she kneels, it takes time. And then, her voice dry, cracked. "I confess that I no longer feel afraid of death." A long pause. "I confess that I no longer feel anything at all." The priest asks, "Do you believe the Lord still sees you?" "I do." "Then he will meet you in your silence." When she leaves, she places a hand on your shoulder. You do not look up. You do not speak. You only wonder, what do we do with the secrets we never confess? Do they grow roots? Or Do they simply wait, just beneath the veil, until we are brave enough to name them? The confession cell is empty again. The candle flickers. The cushion is still warm. You close the small wooden door and lean your forehead against its worn surface. Your duties are finished for the day. But something lingers in the silence, like smoke after incense, like breath after a long chant. You've listened for years, not by choice, perhaps, but by necessity. The walls are thin, the hearts are open. You have become a vessel not of words, but of their echo. And now, you wonder, where do all the whispered confessions go? The next day, the abbess assigns you to garden work. The air is damp. The cypress trees bend in the wind. You kneel among sprouting onions and wild garlic, scraping weeds from between rows. Beside you, Sister Fotini hums a troparion as she digs. Her hands are thick with soil, her voice steady. Have you ever confessed something and still felt burdened? She asks suddenly. You put. She continues. I once confessed that I took joy in another's shame, that I laughed when someone stumbled during that. The priest forgave me, but I never forgot. You say nothing. You don't have to. She wasn't really asking. Back in the chapel that evening, the abbess gives a short teaching on humility. She speaks of St. John Climacus and the rungs of the ladder, how every act of confession is a step upward, even if you slip again. She says, true repentance is not just a turning from sin, but a turning toward light. Even if you turn slowly, even if you stumble. The sisters nod. Some close their eyes. You feel the truth of her words, but also the difficulty. That night, as you prepare the confession cell for the next day, you find a scrap of parchment tucked into the corner of the wooden frame. A single sentence hastily written. I do not know if I still believe. No name, no seal, just the rawness of it. You stare at it for a long time, then fold it and place it beneath the crucifix. The next morning, no one mentions it. Father Nikotas returns, as he always does. His sandals are muddy. His beard is wet with mist. He offers a silent nod and enters the chapel. The sisters begin arriving, one at a time. Sister Theodote comes again. Her eyes are red. She speaks in a whisper so low, you hear nothing, not even her breath. Sister Euphemia confesses impatience with the novices. I slapped one's hand, she says. Not hard, but too quickly. Sister Anthusa, the youngest, confesses a dream. I saw my family. They were feet. I was outside the window, watching, angry. The priest replies, even the desert fathers dreamed of meat and warmth. The body remembers. And then Sister Eustathia returns. She kneels. Her voice cracks. I said once that I hated another's voice, that it angered me. But it was not her voice. The priest waits. It was mine. I couldn't stand hearing it next to hers. The cell is silent, he says. Sometimes we confess one thing, but it hides another. She breathes out. I am afraid of who I am when I'm alone. You are never alone. When she leaves, she touches the door with her palm. Later, you ask the priest, as you hand him water and bread, do you ever carry the weight? He looks up, startled, then says, quietly, every priest carries it, but only until the next confession. You think of that. You wonder how long he's been emptying himself like that, letting the sins pass through him like wind through a screen. You return to your cell and kneel before the cross. Your lips do not move, not yet, but your thoughts begin to unravel, like thread pulled from a spool. The lies you've told by omission, the pride you've swallowed in silence, the envy you buried when another sister advanced before you, the hunger that once drove you to taste wine after complaint just a drop, the longing you still carry for a name never spoken here. The candle flickers. You do not speak the words aloud, not yet, but you wonder if no one hears your confession. Is it still real? If your sin remains within you, but you know it, name it, carry it. Does it still separate you from grace? Or is the beginning of confession simply the willingness to feel its weight? You arrive at the confession cell early. The candle is still new. It's waxed smooth. The stool is cold. The crucifix slightly tilted. You adjust it with care. Your hands tremble, just faintly not from cold, but from something else. Today, it is your turn. You wait in the small chapel, silent, heart pounding beneath your mantle. You've listened to so many confessions. You've carried them, sorted them, tucked them away like folded linens. But your own words have never passed through that thin wooden screen. Until now, Father Nikotas enters quietly. He bows to the cross, then to you. He doesn't ask why you've come. He doesn't need to. He simply gestures to the cell. You step inside. You kneel. Your hands rest in your lap, clenched, then relaxed. The air feels different when it's your voice meant to break it. At first, you say nothing. Then, I do not know what to confess. The words feel smaller than the silence that surrounds them. The priest says nothing. He waits. You try again. I do not sin with my hands. I do not lie. I do not steal. I eat what I am given. I pray the hours. I chant. I work. Still. Silence. But my thoughts. Now your breath my thoughts stray. My heart rebels. I envy the world outside the walls. I resent the ones who walk freer path. I feel pride when praised, and jealousy when others are chosen before me. You pause, and sometimes I feel nothing at all. The priest finally speaks. These are the sins of the soul, not the body. I know. They are the most human. You lower your head. He continues. Do you wish to be cleansed of them? You pause. Longer this time. I'm not sure. His voice does not judge. Even that is something you may offer. Then he asks a question you did not expect. Have you forgiven yourself? You blink. I don't know. There is no absolution if you will not receive it. You stay quiet, breathing in the candle smoke, the warmth of the tiny space, the sound of your own uncertainty. He murmurs a prayer, low and slow. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on this servant, who bends not out of fear, but out of longing. When you leave the cell, you do not feel lightened. Not yet. But something has shifted. You walk slower, straighter. That afternoon, you return to your labor. You bake bread. You wash the altar cloths. You scrape soot from the oil lamps. Each act feels more precise, as if you were moving through your duties, not to forget your sins, but to live alongside them, to carry them differently. That evening, during Compline, the abbess reads from the sayings of the Desert Fathers. A brother said to Abba Permin, if I fall into a shameful sin, my conscience eats at me and I am consumed by despair. And the old man said, in every fall, cry out to God, and he will lift you. The Lord has not said, do not fall, but he said, rise. You close your eyes. You mouth the final words of the chant. You taste the quiet at the end, not as emptiness, but as invitation. Later, in your cell, you light your own candle. You write a note on a scrap of vellum. I am still here. You place it beneath your pillow. Not as confession, but as a promise. And as the flame flickers and your breath slows, you think again. If grace begins with truth, then maybe salvation begins with whispering it, even if only to yourself. Time does not pass here the way it does in the world outside. You do not mark it by sunrises, or shadows, or the chiming of bells in city squares. You live by a different rhythm now, one older than the calendar, more intimate than the seasons. You live by the horologion, the liturgical clock of the Byzantine monastic day. You are one of the sisters in a convent perched on a quiet hillside in Anatolia, surrounded by dry fig trees and olive groves. And within these walls, time is not measured by the hourglass, but by prayer. The hours are not 12, they are 8. 8 sacred pulses through the day and night, each a call to stillness, to voice, to breath. It begins before light. Midnight off it, the sister strikes the sementron slow, deliberate knocks of wood on wood. Rise in darkness. The cells are silent except for the soft rustle of fabric. You wrap your cloak around your shoulders, pick up your candle, and make your way to the chapel. Your feet know the path. Your breath is steady. The midnight office is the most mysterious. It honors the watchfulness of the soul, the unknown hour when the bridegroom will come. You chant psalms with eyes half closed, voice low and reverent. I arose at midnight to give thanks unto thee. Some sisters sway gently as they chant, like branches caught in wind. No one speaks. The candlelight dances on the worn faces of painted icons. The Mother of God looks down with soft, unchanging eyes. After the final amen, the chapel empties quietly. You return to your cell. You may sleep again briefly, but your rest is never deep. You are always listening for the next call. Matin, before dawn, before the birds, before even the light dares to return. You rise again. This time, the chant is longer. The psalms stretch out, layered with canons and hymns. Some sisters sing from memory, others read by trembling lamplight. It is a spiritual rehearsal of the coming day. The soul lifts its head before the sun does. You feel your voice warming, your thoughts settling. You know this hour. Well, it's your favorite. There's a kind of clarity that comes only before morning. By the end of matins, The sky has begun to change. Faint light glows behind the chapel's small east window. The scent of oil and wax lingers in your hair. First hour. Now, it is morning. The world outside is stirring. The sheep in the pasture begin to bleat. The chickens scratch. The wind is cold, but no longer sharp. The first hour is breathed 3 psalms. A prayer. A blessing. But in it, you plant your feet in the ground of the day. This is the moment the light meets your skin. You thank Allah for it. Even if your eyes are still heavy. After prime, the day's labor begins. You tend the gardens, sweep the corridors, help in the scriptorium. But every task is shaped by the expectation of the next hour. You don't work toward lunch, or rest, or evening. You work toward third hour, mid-morning, when the Spirit descended and transformed trembling men into saints. You gather again in the chapel. Another short service Amsa Troparian, a gospel verse. But you feel the shift. Each prayer becomes an anchor, holding you firm in a day that never drifts far from heaven. The chant echoes in your chest. After terse, more labor. The sun climbs high. Sweat beads on your brow. You scrub vegetables in cold water. You feed the goats. You gather herbs. The work is rhythmic, simple, clean. You move with purpose, knowing that soon, 6th hour, noon, the hour of the cross. The sun stands still in the sky, and so do you. You stop everything. You wash your hands. You walk to the chapel. You stand in stillness. You remember Christ's crucifixion, not as symbol, but as moment. In the middle of the day, he bore the weight of the world. This hour is solemn, heavy. The Psalms speak of sorrow, mercy, surrender. Your knees ache from kneeling. Your voice breaks with the final Kyrie. You leave quietly. You eat a small meal, barely more than a handful of lentils, a crust of bread, perhaps a fig. You do not eat to satisfy hunger. You eat to continue serving. 9th hour, mid-afternoon. The shadow begins to grow long again. This is the hour when Christ gave up his spirit. You feel it in the air. The chants are slower now. The words softer. You are growing tired, but the hour will not let you turn away. It holds your gaze to the cross, just a little longer. After Nun, the sisters work in silence. No more speech until evening. You sew, clean, stir broth. You begin to think about the prayers to come, how they will carry you to dusk. Vespers, the most beloved hour. The sun sinks behind the wall. The chapel is lit entirely by candles. The sisters' robes rustle as they move. The smell of incense fills the room. Let my prayer arise in thy sight, as incense, ... double quotes. You sing this line with all that is left in you. Vespers is not a closer. It is a softening. The day bends its head. The soul exhales. The meal after Vespers is simple. You eat seated low, your back against the wall, the reader's voice floating above the bowls. And then, Compline, the final hour. The hour of rest. The hour of dreams. You gather one last time. The chant is slower. Some sisters lean forward, hands folded. Some weep quietly, not from sorrow but from release. Would the saints give rest, O Christ, to the soul of thy servant... You close your eyes, and in that silence, you do not measure time by clocks or candles. You measure it by rhythm, and you wonder, if each prayer is a step, then where are you walking, and who walks beside you in the dark? You begin to notice how your body has adjusted not just to the hours, but to the intervals between them. It's as if your very muscles have memory now. You wake not because of sound, but because your breath knows it is time. You chant not because you're told to, but because the shape of the day leaves no other possibility. You do not live by instinct or whim. You live by rhythm. Between the fixed hours, your life unfolds quietly. After prime, your feet know the path to the garden. You dig into the dry soil, watching the horizon blush with light. The others join you in silence. Some harvest onions. Others gather fallen olives. Sister Melanian tends to the bees. Her veil is thick with netting. Her hands sure, despite the sting marks. She once told you that bees follow their own hours too. Their own divine logic. They return when the air hums just right, she said. You liked that? After terse, you copied lines from the Psalter in the scriptorium, not as a formal assignment. This is your own practice. You write one psalm each day, slow and measured, your hand steady even when your thoughts wander. Today it is Psalm 62. My soul thirsts for thee. My flesh faints for thee, as in a dry and weary land where no water is. You pause on those words. You don't always thirst. Some days, you feel nothing, but you write them anyway. Perhaps the act itself is what teaches the heart to hunger again. Sixth hour comes, as always, with its gravity. You step into the chapel and feel the weight of it, the hour of the cross. You kneel. The air is warm now, thick with summer heat. A bead of sweat rolls down your neck. You let it. You do not move. You do not fan yourself. You let the discomfort stay with you. You begin to understand that prayer isn't always sweetness. Sometimes it is sitting inside the ache. After the meal, you retreat to the cloister corridor and sit under the fig tree. A small wind stirs the leaves. The figs are not yet ripe. They hang heavy and green. One falls, landing near your foot. You leave it there. You think of the ninth hour, how it marks surrender, how it asks not for action, but for letting go. You are beginning to love that hour most. Not because of what you do during it, but because of what you stop trying to hold. Vespers approaches. You can feel it before the bells. The sisters begin to walk more slowly. The light changes. The sky turns gold, then gray. Lamps are lit, oil carefully measured. You carry a bundle of rosemary into the chapel. Place it beside the altar. Its scent clings to your sleeves. The candles flicker. The air stills. You chant with more voice than you expected. You do not think of the words as you sing. You simply give them shape. Oh, gladsome light of the holy glory of the immortal Father. You do not know what immortal feels like, but you know that for this hour, time itself slows, bends, softens. After the meal, lentils, rye bread, wild greens, you step into the courtyard. The sun has slipped beneath the hills. The sky is ink dark, stitched with stars. You do not speak. None of you do. Your feet know the way back to the chapel compline. You've come to cherish it, not because it signals rest, but because it closes the day with dignity. A soft folding of the page, a lullaby to the soul. The chant tonight is quieter than usual. One of the sisters is ill. Her bed has been moved closer to the chapel so she can hear the prayers from her cot. You sing for her. You sing even when your voice... After the final psalm, you return to your cell. The candle is still burning. You sit for a long time, listening to its slow hiss, and you ask yourself, what if all of life were this rhythm? Not something to chase, or plan, or master, but something to enter, like a stream. Something that carries you, even when you no longer know how to swim. Tonight, you cannot sleep. The candle by your bedside has long gone out. The silence is thick, almost solid. The other cells are quiet, save for the occasional creak of a wooden cot, the soft turn of a sleeping body, the flutter of a moth's wings against the stone. But you lie awake, listening not to sound, but to the gaps between it. Listening, really, for the next hour, because you know it's coming. It always is. In this place, time is not a straight road, it is a circle, a loop of holy echo. Midnight will arrive soon, and with it, the mezzanicticon, the midnight office. Once again, you rise. Your feet touch the cold floor. Your fingers find your mantle, worn and patched, and you step into the hallway. The cementron sounds low, wooden. The sisters begin to emerge, like shadows folding into light. No one speaks. Some carry candles. Some walk by, memory alone. The chapel is dim, its only light coming from a single hanging lamp before the icon of the Virgin. You take your place on the worn floor, knees on stone, spine straight, eyes forward. The office begins. Behold, the bridegroom comes in the middle of the night. ... The words wash over you. The hour calls not for excitement, not for action, but for readiness, for stillness in waiting. You feel your body settle. After the final prayer, you return to your cell, but you do not sleep immediately. Instead, you sit and reflect. It occurs to you that no one ever really explains why the hours are so strict. Why 8 times a day, the rhythm must be kept, regardless of weather, mood, or fatigue. No one tells you, because no one needs to. You live it, and eventually, you understand. The purpose of the hours is not efficiency. It is not achievement. It is alignment. You are tuning yourself to something older, deeper, larger than your own story. You are stepping into the long river of voices who have risen before dawn for 1,000 years. You are matching your breath to the breath of saints, of psalmists, of weary disciples who could not keep watch, but tried anyway. You are not trying to conquer time. You are learning how to walk with it. Later that morning, you assist Sister Melanian in setting up for first hour. She places candles in their stands with steady fingers. Her voice is softer today. She whispers, I once Miss Nun fell asleep in the garden, woke in tears. You glance at her. She's smiling now. I thought Allah had turned his face away. And did he? You ask. She shakes her head. He was already walking with me, even in the sleep. You carry that with you through the day. At third hour, you chant louder than usual. At sixth, you feel the ache in your back but do not shift. At ninth, you look around and see not exhaustion, but not just women keeping a schedule but souls forming a shape. You realize now, the hours aren't interruptions. They are anchors. Each one ties you to the ground, and each one lifts you gently towards something invisible. By Vespers, the world outside has turned golden again. The shadows fall long across the courtyard. You see the lights from the chapel windows spill out in bands, like threads of fire. You hear the words, "Let my prayer arise in thy sight," as incense. And you believe it. You believe that the prayer does rise, that it curls upward from tired lips, through heavy air, into the unseen. You believe that the clock you follow is not one of minutes, or a second's put of breath, sacrifice, and return. That evening, after Complan, you do not lie down right away. Instead, you sit beside the window in your cell, watching the final bit of sky darken into night. You do not need to count the hours. You know they will come. You know you will rise. You know your voice will answer. Not because it must, but because it has learned the rhythm of the sacred. And you wonder, when your life has ended, and your voice is gone, will the hours still echo with your breath? Will your steps still walk the ancient path of prayer? Will the rhythm remember you? The infirmary is always quiet, even during the daylight hours. It sits on the eastern side of the convent, near the herb garden, tucked behind a sloped stone corridor and separated by a thick woolen curtain instead of a door. You have to duck slightly as you enter, even though you know the low arch well. Inside, the air is cool, laced with rosemary and thyme, and faintly sweet with honeyed wine and vinegar. You serve here now, not as a physician, not even as a trained herbalist, but as a pair of hands, steady and silent, ready to lift a bowl, boil a poultice, or press fingers to a fevered forehead. You are not alone. Sister Hypatia oversees the infirmary, older than most, with a memory like an apothecary shelf, full of formulas and remedies and quiet warnings. She speaks softly, rarely leaves, and smells always of lavender and smoke. She taught you the difference between peppermint and how to crush chamomile without bruising its strength, and how to warm wine just enough to draw out the bitterness of wormwood. You've learned how to bind a sprained wrist, how to cup a fractured rib, how to kneel beside a dying woman and say nothing. Today, you carry a basket of fresh calendula blossoms into the room. They'll be dried for ointments, mixed with beeswax and olive oil, for cracked skin and old scars. You spread them out gently on a linen cloth, placing them near the small hearth, where warmth will coax out their color. Sister Ustadia lies in the far cot. She's had a lingering cough for weeks. You wash her face with rose water, then place a hot compress over her chest, infused with mustard seed and fig syrup. She winces, then breathes more deeply. The convent has no physician. That's not uncommon. Most Byzantine monasteries relied on traditional knowledge passed down through the generations. What grows, what soothes, what burns away fever. Sometimes a doctor from the city visits, but only when summoned. And summoning him requires a letter, a seal, a journey by mule. It rarely happens. So, you become the physician, or at least, the witness. You spend your days boiling bones for broth, mixing wild honey with crushed almonds to soothe sore throats, grinding cinnamon bark with wine for aching bellies. You have learned the hours not only of prayer, but of pulse. You know when someone is nearing death before they say a word. The skin changes first, then the eyes, then the breath. You remember the first time a sister died in your arms. Sister Zoe. She had come to the convent late in life, after her husband was lost at sea. She never spoke of her past, only smiled faintly and prayed with quiet urgency. When she began coughing blood, you thought it might pass. Hypatia made teas, wrapped her in blankets, prayed, but the fever never broke. And on the third night, her hands gripped yours. Her lips mouthed words you could not hear, and then she was still. The convent did not stop. Vespers was still sung, lentils still cooked, psalms still read. But for days, her absence clung to the stone walls like cold breath. You helped wash her body, rubbed her feet with mud, wrapped her in linen. And when she was placed in the chapel for final prayers, he stood at the back, wondering, does the work we do in here, among herbs and pain and whispers, truly matter, or is it just waiting in a softer form? Today, Sister Eupraxia burns her hand while tending the oil lamp. You take her gently by the wrist and lead her to the basin. Cold water, then honey and wax. She doesn't cry. She watches you work and says, "You always know what to do, but you don't. You only know how to be steady, how to stay." Hypatia once told you, "We don't heal. We offer space for healing." You try to believe her. As evening falls, the air cools further. You light a small coal in the censer and place dried laurel on top. The scent fills the infirmary shop. Clean, ancient. You help Sister Eustavia sit up for Cumplin. Her cough is weaker tonight, her eyes softer. She thanks you, just once, in a whisper, and for a moment, you feel as though the walls of the infirmary are breathing with you. Not a place of sorrow, but of tending. You return to your cell that night with the scent of basil and vinegar still clinging to your hands, and you wonder, is healing a miracle? Or is it just the slow, faithful touch of one soul on another? The scent of crushed marjoram fills the infirmary today. You're steeping it in a pot of boiled wine and honey. Old remedy Sister Hypatia swears by 4 lingering coughs. The air is thick with steam, laced with the green bitterness of the leaves. You pour the mixture through linen to strain it, then let it cool in a small clay bowl before carrying it to Sister Eustavia's bedside. She sips it slowly. Her breath is still shallow, but steadier now. Her voice, just a whisper. It tastes like earth and bees. You smile faintly. That's all we have. The infirmary has only 3 cots, but they are rarely all empty. Winter brings coughs. Summer brings heat stroke. Autumn brings infection. Spring, strangely, brings fever too born of thawing earth, unsettled wind. You used to think illness was rare. Here's something that crept in from the outside, but you've come to understand. Even behind the thickest monastery walls, the body remains fragile, and so do the thoughts, especially the thoughts. There is one sister here now, Sister Iulia, who isn't ill in her body. Not exactly, but her eyes have changed. She no longer chants at Vespers. She no longer eats with the others. She doesn't speak unless addressed directly. She simply sits, hands folded, staring out the infirmary window toward the distant olive trees. The abbess calls it a clouding of the spirit. Hypatia calls it exhaustion of the soul. You call it You bring her food every day. Barley porridge, goat's milk, dried plums. Sometimes she eats. Sometimes she simply stares. Once, she whispered, "Do you think Allah still hears me if I have no words?" You didn't know how to answer, so you sat beside her and said nothing. In the apothecary corner, you draw calendula and yarrow for pulp. You hang lavender from the ceiling to calm the nervous sisters. You mix vinegar and myrtle into a strong salve for bruises. Sister Hypatia watches your work with quiet approval. There's more healing in tending, she says, than in curing. One afternoon, she hands you a small book, worn, patched, written in a faded, curling script. These are the remedies written by Sister Melanian before she died. Read them, then add your own. To soften sorrow in the chest, mix thyme and fig. For the pain of the womb, apply warm ash in a cloth. ... double quotes. For loneliness music, if sung from the stomach. You pause at that one. For loneliness, you don't know if it works, but you believe she believed it. You begin adding notes in the margins. For Sister Iulia, hold her hand while she stares. For Sister Eustacia, honey after evening prayer. For myself, remember the breath counts too. That night, a storm rolls across the hills. The wind howls through the stone corridors. You check the infirmary roof for leaks. The cots are warm. Sister Eustavia sleeps. Sister Iulia has eaten her meal. No one calls for you, and yet, you stay awake. You watch the flame of the oil lamp flicker. You watch the steam rise from the pot of steeped rosemary. You listen not for cries, but for silence. Because sometimes silence is not emptiness. Sometimes it's the quiet sound of healing beginning. You remember what Hypatia once said. We don't drag suffering out. We sit beside it until it softens. You walk through the corridor, lantern in hand. The rain taps steadily against the roof. In your mind, you begin rewriting the old remedies. For fevers, elderflower and shade. For grief, patience in hands not your own. For prayers unanswered, chant. Anyway, you pause by the chapel before returning to your cell. You kneel, just briefly, not to speak, but to listen. And you wonder, if the body is healed by touch, then what is the balm for what we cannot name? It begins with a fever, not just one sister this time, but 3. First, Sister Eustavia again, Then Sister Fortini. Then one of the novices, pale and shaking, her eyes glassy, breath shallow. Within hours, the infirmary is full. The quiet room where you used to listen to the drip of oil or the scrape of mortar. You move between cots, basin in hand, your sleeves rolled, hair damp with sweat. Sister Hypatia.com, even as she coughs behind her veil, assigns treatments like Psalms short, memorized, effective, fever balm, willow bark, and elderflowers, she says. Tea, ginger, mint, cinnamon, blankets double layered, no draft. Keep them sitting upright if they can stand it. You follow her instructions. You forget to eat. You forget the clock. You forget even the sound of the bells until they stop altogether. The abbess orders a suspension of communal services. The chapel remains lit, but the sisters no longer gather. Each prays where she stands. In the garden, beside a cot, on the floor of the cloister corridor. You keep a candle burning in the infirmary night and day. It's not for the light, it's for the rhythm. The sickness passes slowly, like a dark mist reluctant to lift. It doesn't take everyone, but it stays long enough to make you fear it might. One night, you sit beside the novice. Her name is Sophronia. She's barely 16. She speaks only in fragments. Her lips are dry. You hold her hand and hum a troparion under your breath. She doesn't know the words yet. She squeezes her hand, just once, and sleeps. That same night, Sister Hypatia collapses. You catch her as she falls, her body heavier than it looks. You lower her to a cot and remove her veil. Her skin is flushed, her pulse uneven. You press a damp cloth to her forehead. She opens one eye. Myrtle leaf and rue. She rasps. Boil it with vinegar. I know, you whisper. You do. She nods. Good, she sleeps. You sit at her bedside, listening to her breathe. It hits you then. You are now the one who knows. The girl who once dropped clay pots and forgot whether balm meant fresh or dried has become the keeper of the infirmary. You think of the notebook the one Millennian started, Hypatia filled, and now yours to continue. You take it from the shelf. Add a new entry. For fever in the elder. Don't leave the bedside, not even to pray. The next morning, the storm has passed. The fever breaks first in you. Fortini can stand again by sundown. And Hypatia, quiet but steady, lifts a spoon to her lips and says, "Too much vinegar." You laugh for the first time in days. That evening, the abbess allows compline to resume in the chapel. Those well enough to stand gather there, limping, leaning, wrapped in shawls. You help light the candles. The flame feels warmer tonight. You kneel on the back row. Your voice is hoarse, but you sing. Would the saints give rest, O Christ, to the soul of thy servant. You think of Sister Zoe. You think of those who were healed. You think of those who were not. And you think of yourself not as a healer, not quite, but as one who remains, who tends, who holds the rhythm when others cannot. Later, you sit again with the notebook. You write without hesitation. Healing is not the end of pain, it is the moment you are no longer alone in it. You close the book. You extinguish the lamp. And before sleep, you pray not loudly, not with many words, only this: let me be the hands that steady the bowl. And you wonder if mercy flows like oil through this house. Then, who keeps the lamp lit when even the healer falls? You think you might know the answer now. Your fingers still remember the feel of silk, even now wrapped in coarse wool. Your feet bare on cold stone floors. Your head shaved beneath a dark veils, where beneath your skin, your body remembers. You were once Lady Cassian of the House of Duke, born in a marble villa near the Blascherni Palace, raised among courtyards and courtiers, perfumed pillows, mirrors framed in gold. You were taught to recite Homer before you could embrace. You were expected to marry into influence, manage estates, host banquets, and bear sons who would command legions. But you are no longer Lady Now, you are Sister Cassin, just one more robed figure in the shadowed halls of a convent high in the mountains of Bithynia. Here, no one bows when you pass. No one adjusts your cushion. No one brings honeyed wine or sweet almond paste after prayers. Here, your hands blister from scrubbing the latrines. And still, you remain. The sisters accepted you quietly. No one asked why you come not aloud, but they saw your hesitation, your soft hands, your uncalloused knees. They knew. Everyone knows when a woman flees the world wearing pearls beneath her habit. At first, you flinched at the noise of the sound. You moved too slowly during Vespers. You crossed yourself out of rhythm. The others noticed, but said nothing. Except for the abbess. One morning, after matins, She pulled you aside beneath the olive tree. "You're not here to perform poverty," she said, eyes steady. "You're here to learn silence." You bowed. You didn't argue. That was your first lesson. Now, months have passed. You rise with the others. You walk barefoot to prayer. You tie your belt with trembling fingers. Kneel until your knees bruise. Eat barley bread in silence. You've stopped longing for honey. You've started missing something strange as certainty. In the world you left, everything had form, rank, protocol. You knew how to behave, even if you hated it. But here, holiness is measured in obscurity, greatness in obedience. The most beloved sisters are the ones you barely hear. You wonder, who will you become when no one is watching? Your second lesson comes in the garden. Sister Eupraxia teaches you to tend a basil. You kneel in the dirt with her, pulling weeds from around the roots. "You press too hard," she says. "The stem bruises." You nod. Adjust. Later, she shows you how to cut lavender without splintering the stalk. Everything grows better when touched with care. You begin to learn how to touch the world gently. Your third lesson is in the You serve the mill lentils, hard bread, olives. The bowl is heavy in your hands. You bend low to pass it. One of the sisters says, "Thank you, Sister Cat," and something inside you shifts. Not because of the thanks, but because for the first time, the name feels real. Cassia, not the daughter of a senator, not the heir to an estate, just the sister who passed the bread. Later, in your cell, you kneel beside your cot. The straw beneath your knees pokes through the mat. The candle is almost gone. You open your psalter and trace the lines with your fingertip. "I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked." You whisper it aloud. It does not feel like punishment. It feels like choice. And in that moment, the fourth lesson comes not from a sister, not from a psalm, but from within. Humility is not forgetting who you were. It's letting go of who you thought you had to be. Winter comes quickly in Bithynia. The wind cuts through the narrow cloister halls. The gardens wither. The sky hovers close and gray, casting a pale light that never feels like day. You wrap your wool mantle tighter, but still, the cold slips through. It touches your scalp beneath the veil. You find your knees through the thin mattress at night. You do not complain. You used to, in the early days, when your hands first blistered and the meals were too bitter to swallow, when the hours dragged like chains and the silences stretched too wide. You used to lie awake and dream of the baths, the linens, the soft warmth of velvet slippers beneath your feet. But now, you rise without thinking. You kneel without flinching. You have learned the rhythm, and the rhythm, strangely, has made room for you. You still don't speak often. That is not your place. But your presence is no longer questioned. When a sister falls ill, you help bathe her. When the olive oil runs low, you walk to the village with a mule and bring back jars. When the rain floods the laundry stone, you dig a trench so the water will run out. You do these things without instruction. And sometimes, the sisters smile, not with flattery. Not like the noble women at court who painted their mouths with crushed berries and smiled with their teeth. These smiles are smaller, like cracked stones in the sun. They mean more. One evening after Vespers, the abbess calls you to her cell. Her room is plain. A wooden stool, a small icon, a basket of dried herbs beside the bed. She does not offer you wine, just a place to sit. She studies you for a long moment and says simply, "You have softened. You don't know what to say. Do you miss it?" She asks. You don't have to ask what she means. You pause. Sometimes, what part? You think for a moment. Not the silk, not the marble floors, not the servants. What then? The certainty. Knowing where I fit. The abbess nods. Here, you won't find certainty, but you might find peace. Then, gently, not everyone does. You ask her, "What do you mean?" She leans forward slightly. Some women come here to hide from disgrace, from scandal, from choices they regret. Others come chasing holiness, like it's a prize to be won. Most stay, some do not. You breathe in slowly. And me, I think you came looking for truth, she says, and that's harder to carry than sackcloth. You leave her cell with a strange tightness in your chest. That night, you walk alone through the cloister, past the garden, past the well, toward the low stone wall that marks the convent's edge. Beyond it, the hills roll downward toward the sea. You cannot see the water, but you smell the salt in the wind. You think of your mother, of the letters you never answered. You think of the young nobleman you almost married, the one with the soft hands and tired eyes. You were supposed to be his bride. Instead, you ran. You had your reasons. A scandal too complicated to explain. A betrayal, a deep, wrenching grief that sent you not to revenge but to silence. You have not spoken that story aloud. Not even once. And now, you wonder if you ever will. In the convent, no one asks. The sisters only care how you chant, how you clean, how you kneel when the bell tolls. What you were before does not matter. And yet, it lingers. Later that week, a visitor comes. An old steward from your family estate. You see him in the garden speaking with the abbess. He's brought a letter, sealed in green wax. You recognize the emblem of fig tree, bent in wind. You refuse to take it. The abbess says nothing. She leaves the letter on your cot. You sit beside it that night for hours, the wax unbroken. You light a candle, then snuff it out again. Eventually, you place the letter in the fire, not from hatred, but from choosing the silence over the story you thought you needed to reclaim. The next morning, you kneel in chapel. The psalms are long, and the incense is thick. The air is cold again, but you feel here, not because you are sure, but because, for the first time, you do not feel like you are pretending, and you wonder if identity is not what we wear, or what we lose. Then is it the quiet that remains when everything else is stripped away? The snow begins to fall by minute, not heavy, not in flurries, just a fine, patient dust, like sifted flour shaken from the sky. It gathers on the cloister arches, catches in the folds of your mantle, melts slowly against your sleeves. The hills beyond the convent wall turn pale. The wind stills. The world softens. And so do you. You are kneeling in the garden, pruning the brittle rosemary stalks. Your fingers are numb. The clippers dull, but you work without hurry. The leaves are dried. Yes, but still useful. They'll be boiled in oil for sore joints, or bundled to hang in the infirmary. You think of Sister Eupraxia, who taught you this. Nothing is wasted in the hands of Allah. You believe her now. It's been nearly a year since your time. You still remember the moment the abbess cut your hair in the shape of a cross. The cold blade, the falling strands, the silence that followed. You were given your robe, your name, your cell, but not your place. That had to be earned out with prayers or fasting alone, but with patience, with presence, with willingness. And you have stayed. That, more than anything, has been your offering. The abbess now sends you to guide the younger sisters. You teach them how to prepare the herbs, how to clean the chapel oil lamps without cracking the glass, how to kneel for long hours without fainting. You teach them not through sermons, but through steadiness. You never thought you would become steady. And yet, here you are. You still miss certain things. The smell of citrus in your mother's garden, the warmth of fur-lined sleeves, the rustle of silk against marble floors. But the ache has quieted. Now, it is memory, not mourning. Some days, you write in the margins of the Sultanate words, just marks, small dots beside the verses that now feel like yours. A broken and contrite heart. O God, thou wilt not despise, though I walk through the valley of the shadow, ... He raiseth up the poor from the dust, ... One evening, the abbess calls you again. This time, her words are different. We are considering you for the veil. You blink. The great schemer, you ask. She nods. Not yet. But in time. You don't answer right away. You know what it means. A deeper commitment. More silence. More solitude. Fewer ties to the world. Even to the sisterhood. You would be set apart. Cloistered within the cloister. You are not afraid. But neither are you sure. Later, in your cell, you sit with the candle burning low. You lay your hands flat on your lap and whisper, "Am I ready to vanish?" Because that is what the veil asks, not death, but disappearance. A life lived fully for the unseen, for the nameless holiness that lingers in corners and in quiet hands. You think of your old life. You remember being seen, celebrated, expected. You remember applause. Julie. And now, you remember a novice slipping a note under your door. Thank you for sitting with me when I was afraid. You remember Sister Iulia holding your hand through her fever. You remember the abbess smiling, just slightly, when you finished weaving the altar cloth without being asked. These are your new decorations. Not gold, but present. That night, you wake before the stars are still out. The convent is silent. You step into the corridor barefoot and walk to the chapel alone. You kneel before the icon of the Theotokos, and in the hush, you whisper, "If I vanish, let it be into you, not into legend, not into regret, not into punishment, but into purpose, into peace, into the rhythm that asks no name, and gives no tittle-only belonging. And as the sisters begin to rise, their footsteps soft against stone, you remain kneeling. The snow continues to fall, and you wonder, if obscurity is the highest form of offering, then maybe silence is not the absence of voice, but the fullness of presence. And now, as the snow settles gently on the rooftops, and the last candle flickers low in the chapel, everything begins to slow. The voices have quieted, the footfalls have stilled, and the great silence of night has returned to embrace the cloister. Somewhere in the garden, frost traces its delicate fingers along the edge of the rosemary bush. The fig trees stand motionless, their branches resting like folded hands in prayer. Within your cell, the air is still and cool. Your breath softens, your shoulders sink just slightly, and the weight of the day, its small burdens, its quiet labors, its silent offerings melts away, like steam rising from a warm bowl of evening broth. You have come far, from silk to sackcloth, from the noise of acclaim to the hush of belonging. Your journey has been slow and sure and wholly unseen. And that, perhaps, is the gift. There is no curtain call here, no final applause, only a candle burning low beside a page of psalms, and a heart that has learned, over time, how to beat in rhythm with silence. You are not lost. You are not forgotten. You are exactly where you were meant to be all along. So let the walls fade now. Let the breath of the earth wrap around you. Let the soft snow of memory drift down across your thoughts, and let yourself rest in the gentle certainty that your quiet lifelike, every prayer ever whispered has been heard. And sleep, dear one, sleep.